game 82.
Yeah.
That happens. Obviously upset you. Can you tell us like kind of what you thought of the play?
I thought it was a cheap, dirty play. That's very dangerous, and I don't feel like there's room in the game of basketball for that. Thank God that I'm able to sit here today and I'm sitting here talking to you guys because it could have been much worse. It could have been much worse than what it was, man. When you shove a guy in the back like that, there's a lot of things that can come from that, man. And I think that's almost like at the top of the list of like plays that you don't make on a basketball court in terms of how dangerous it could be. So yeah, I was heated, and I didn't really know what happened because on my way down, I hit Wingen's leg, and then things got kind of blurry for me. When I stood back up, I saw guys saying like, no, that's dirty, that was a dirty play. So after I got back to the bench, I'm like, damn, did he push me? Like, what happened? And everybody's like, yeah, he pushed you. It was a dirty play, and I didn't really realize this, the severity of it until I saw the replay. I didn't see the replay until halftime when I went back in the locker room. So I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that was a dirty ass play.
Sort of big picture with this season, Wayne, when there was so much optimism when guys got here. At the beginning, there was a lot of star power, a lot of veterans, championship pedigree in the organization, and it never really felt like it ever really caught in any sort of way. How frustrating was it to be a part of that kind of knowing sort of what this team's goals were, but then seeing a product that was so far away from achieving it?
It was very frustrating. It was very, very frustrating. It was also disappointing, just because I felt like we had some pieces that if it was put together the right way, if we found that cohesiveness, that togetherness on the floor, that it could be very dangerous. And I just I feel like we never reached that layer. We never reached that level of continuity, on either sides of the ball, and never gelled or meshed.
Wayne, for you specifically, how did the expectation line up with the reality of this season for you and your role and your opportunity to contribute? I think you were, in most people's minds, penciled in as a starter if this team was at full health at the beginning of the year, and then you end up playing in only 43 games. Why do you think that was, and was that difficult for you?
It was very difficult. To answer your last question, it was very difficult, especially throughout the season. I thought there was a lot of times where I felt like I could have been plugged in to help our team. There was a lot of nights where I felt like we weren't shooting the ball very well as a team. We needed some spacing, so on and so forth, the things that I provide, and didn't really get that opportunity. But it was. I'll just say from a team standpoint, it was a weird season, man. It was awkward in terms of our connection on the floor. I don't think it ever was there. And I'm a guy who plays off of that. I'm a guy who plays off of connection and togetherness and ball movement. And like I said, I just don't feel like we ever reached that level.
Dave?
Wayne, you've been in the league 12, 13 years now, right?
This is my 13th year, yeah.
And been on a handful of teams.
Yeah.
Anything unique to this organization, the amount of attention it gets, and the players that this year's team had, the amount of attention it got, that made it difficult to kind of separate yourselves from that weight of expectations and just kind of go to work without that stuff floating around?
I think it seeped in naturally, with so much coverage of our team this year, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I think it definitely played its part, and not really allowing us to be who we were capable of being. I feel like you know, kind of that pressure night in and night out of, you know, what's happening tonight, instead of keeping that big picture mindset kind of closed in on us. I thought that played a part of it, for sure.
Sorry. When some of that, what you talked about, the lack of chemistry seemed like it was pretty evident early, right? Even the preseason, early in the season.
Mm-hmm.
And when it's not there, does it compound? And have you been on other teams like that where it just for whatever reason the mix doesn't work and whatever plays a role in that?
I think this is a unique situation. So I don't think I've ever been on a team quite like this where, you know, that was a situation. But guys had hope, man. You know, early on, it's like, all right, like, we got time. You know, it's going to take time. It's going to take reps. It's going to, you know, we had hope that it was going to get there. And, you know, it never quite got there. And I think it reached a point where it was like, all right, you know, we're 30 games in, all right, 40 games in, you know, 50 games in, and you know, I think, you know, we were a 500 team for a while there, and then I think at a point where I think injuries crept in, and then COVID hit, and next thing you know, we just declined, you know, pretty quickly. We just never were able to catch a stride.
You know, you talk about just how tough it was to create on-floor chemistry, and I think Russ was here earlier talking about his comfort level and just how he kind of never found it.
Mm-hmm.
Was that something that was just difficult to build around with such a key player, a high usage player, just not being able to find his groove for so much of the year?
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about the point guard of our team, right? You know, that's usually the head of the snake. So, you know, with him feeling like that, you know, it was obviously evident. And he'll tell you, you know, he doesn't feel like he had the best year of his career, you know, by any means, right? So, but you know, as a point guard of the team, you know, if he feels uncomfortable on the floor and you know, he doesn't feel the connection and, you know, within his game, you know, that affects, you know, that kind of, you know, trickles down as well. So I think it all is relevant.
Good.
Wayne, I have a couple of just general stats for you. I'm curious, like, how they land for you. Like, this team started 41 different starting lineups this year. Before you guys won last night in Denver, this team hadn't won consecutive games since, I think, January 7th.
Yeah.
26 different players, I think.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Or 20. McClung and then Kendrick.
Oh yeah, there you go. Yeah.
And then I don't think this team was ever more than 3 games over 500 this year. I know you're talking about how guys believed a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Was that belief? When did that belief, you think, stop being realistic with this team?
First of all, those stats are pretty eye-opening, but I didn't. I don't have a date. I'm not exactly sure when. I think it was. You know, you just kind of felt it. You know, once COVID hit. You know, and there's different guys being brought in and playing in front of guys that have been here, and you know, the mix and match of just throwing guys in there to see what stuck. I think that's when, you know, I kind of felt the connection of the group leaving, for sure.
We'll go to Alan on Zoom.
Hey Wayne, I'm curious to get your thoughts on, as far as the injuries go, obviously the injuries were a big part of the season, like you mentioned, health and safety protocols as well, just I think something the whole league dealt with.
Mm-hmm.
Are there other things that stand out to you, you know, when you see 49 losses on the season? Are there other stuff aside from the injuries that, like I mentioned, they stand out in the big scope of things of why the season went the way it did?
when you say other stuff, you know, like, I'm not sure what you mean.
It could be, I know you mentioned connection being one thing, it could be maybe a lack of continuity, just other things in that regards, on the floor, off the floor, that's really what I'm referring to.
You know, it's funny, man, because off the floor, we all got along pretty well. You know, we all enjoyed each other pretty well. So it was weird to see how once we got on the floor, that connection, you know, wasn't there. But yeah, I think, like I said before, man, it was one of those things where it just didn't mesh. You know, there was always I felt like there was a tension on the floor. There was never cohesiveness, continuity, and togetherness. You know, it just didn't feel like we ever got to that layer.
The last one, what you done?
Wayne, in a tough season, how much did you need UNC beating Duke twice?
Oh, man. You don't even know how many times I came in cheesing and giddy after we beat those guys, man. Twice, you know, sent Coach K out the right way. You know, those are some of the highlights of my season for sure.
That second win's like almost as good as had you beaten Kansas, right?
You know, it's funny, man. I went to the championship game, and that was like that Duke game was like our championship. And I got there, and I was talking to all the former players. They were like, "Yeah, man, like you should have came to the last game. That was our championship. That was our championship."